Well, I think when we look at the silver market, the one thing to keep in mind, it is a lot larger than these equity markets.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics with a breaking scoop tonight. It's been quite an eventful day. We're still on Monday, February 22nd. We had a silver rally today, but just when I thought it might almost be bedtime, the news continues. So fortunately, to cover this story is James Anderson of SD Bullion. James, I know it's late on your end too, but would you agree that we found some new information that silver investors probably weren't aware about?
Well, it's new, and it's also classic information. There's stories that sometimes I forget to even bring up, and people who are new in this market need to hear. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, let's dig right in. I know it's late and people need to get the news as soon as possible. So turns out that Jeff Currie of Goldman Sachs has more footage talking about the silver market. And let's just go right to the commentary. Here's Jeff Currie on Bloomberg TV.
Well, I think when we look at the silver market, the one thing to keep in mind, it is a lot larger than these equity markets.
Excuse me? James, did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. Well, I think when we look at the silver market, the one thing to keep in mind, it is a lot larger than these equity markets.
Did he say the silver market is a lot larger than the equity markets now?
He just said that, yes. Yeah, I mean, we can go through the numbers in a minute. Let's go on to the next slide. I'm sure something else is going to come out of his mouth.
I've still only made it 30 seconds into the entire clip, and we had to make a video already. So,
all right.
Now you put the total amount of open interest of silver, including both above ground and below ground, somewhere in that $200 billion range on an annual output basis.
$200 billion range on an annual output basis.
Right. So there's 900 million roughly ounces of silver that are made every year between new mine supply and recycled silver. So, I mean, let's just say it's a billion, all right, and multiply it by what spot today? What, 27? So that's 27 billion. I don't know what he's talking about. He's talking about 200 billion. I mean, it must be a lot of derivatives that he's jamming in there. I don't understand.
Well, the only other thing I could think of is that he mentioned the open interest of silver below the ground. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's
ground and below ground. Open interest of silver, including both above ground and below ground, somewhere in that $200 billion range on an annual output basis.
So he's counting the molten silver that's deep in the core of the earth that we haven't mined yet.
But Jay,
sorry. No, I'm serious. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. It doesn't make much sense.
Well, hold it together here, Chris. You can do it. Well, here's the question I have, because, I mean, I don't know what numbers he's citing there. Let me pull up Silver Institute. So I will be fair, I don't know if Goldman has different supply and demand numbers, but this is an update from Silver Institute. If you can see the address up there, here, Silver Institute hosts a webinar, and this is what they released. So like you pointed out, total supply, this is a million ounces. So 962 million ounces. It's about a billion each year. And James, by the way, it's a big silver rally today, buddy. We're up to $28. So
yeah, and it was strong. It was steady. It wasn't spiky. It just slowly moving up. It's very good.
Yeah, well, it's interesting things happening ahead of that COMEX options expiration. Yet, in either case, 27 or 28 times a billion, like you said, gets us to 27 or 28 billion. I mean, we'll go through some of the other numbers about the stock market size, getting back to that one. But what I don't get, here's the same Jeff Currie 2 days later. I mean, the first clip here is, this one's February 2nd. So as you can actually see in the background, this is the day silver was getting clobbered. Now, I hope investors didn't hear some of this. And if I don't know, again, maybe there's something I'm missing. That's why I called for backup on this one. But because then 2 days later, on the 4th, day after the changes in the SLV prospectus were made that they didn't really tell anyone about, here's Jeff Currie saying,
I mean, you're talking 900 million ounces in the ETF versus a 25 billion ounce market.
So I'm thinking, all right, I remember you put that number in here. So James, can you check, make sure I didn't lose a comma somewhere, but there's 25 billion times 28. I don't know if you can see in the formula bars, A1 times A2. So that's 700 billion. So even if you used his number, the math, it's like the math doesn't even add up.
I mean, Apple is bigger than that. Apple alone. So what is he talking about? And by the way, 25 billion or whatever he said about silver, it's untrue. Again, there's like 5 billion ounces of fine silver in the ground. I mean, not in the ground. I'm speaking like him. I mean, in amongst private investors, the ETFs, the comics, all the numbers. So, like, I mean, there's 5 billion ounces. I've done the number. We've done the work and the research. He's lying by 5 times.
Well, I mean, it's. I always thought silver was a lot smaller. I'm like, geez, I got to check my own book if I missed that one. And here, how big is the stock market? 70 trillion. Now, he talked about silver, and it seemed like he was looking at global amounts. So he didn't say just U.S. equities, but this is of all stocks worldwide.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and even in like that data may be a couple years old. I looked last year, 2020. It was at 89 trillion worldwide. So let's say it's 100 trillion. Either way, I mean, it's not even close. It dwarfs silver.
New York Stock Exchange at 30.1 trillion as of February 2018. And that was before the bubble even got that big.
Right.
Actually, James, this one's pretty nifty. Well, not that one, but this one is pretty nifty. Not that one. Okay. James, actually, this one's pretty nifty by the Visual Capitalist. See, each square this size is worth 100 billion. So there is silver, and their numbers, they have the value of all above ground silver stocks is 43.9 billion, right, using a $17-20 spot price. Now, obviously, silver is a little bit higher than it was then.
And that data they're using is the Silver Institute data of all the transparent ounces the Silver Institute cites. The Silver Institute does not cite the private bullion sales that we've been monitoring for decades, but it's like, it's pretty close.
And James, this also doesn't count the below ground open interest either. So
the stuff in the mantle of the earth. Yeah, okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So I don't know how many blocks that would add, but if you go down here, I mean, you'd have to have a really big open interest below ground.
To cover the military spending.
To match military or the budget deficit. And this is before Biden came in.
Right.
So, or the billionaires, and there's Fortune 500. Here's the stock market. So.
Right. I mean, Chris, this reminded me when you called me about this, just how silly sometimes the headlines are and some of the stuff that I've read in this sphere for the last dozen years. In 2014, on June 19, 2014, Bloomberg published an article about the fix because there was a huge scandal. Actually, there was a lot of trouble with the old London fix, and they got in trouble for basically rigging the prices of silver and gold for decades. And they had to rejigger it and pretend like now they're doing it right. But in the article, it starts right away. In the Bloomberg article, it says that the silver market is 5 trillion notional value in that article. And 5 trillion is, I mean, it's just massive. It's much larger than the numbers we've been talking about. So they must be taking into account all the derivatives that are traded on local London and underneath the, that are not physical bullion ounces. And so I did the math. If you take 5 trillion divided by the price of silver at that time, it was like just under $20 an ounce in June of 2014. So that makes a leverage essentially of like 250 to 1 if you compare just the annual mine supply that year versus what they're claiming the silver notional market was worth. So it just shows you the amount of leverage that's put onto silver to keep it pressed down, to keep the price artificially suppressed at these ridiculous spot prices that we've been told the price of silver is worth for so many decades.
James, is there any conceivable way this could even be close what he says right here?
Well, I think when we look at the silver market, the one thing to keep in mind, it is a lot larger than these equity markets.
Again, the size of just Apple alone is just dwarfs the entire silver market when you add up silver that's mined every year, all the silver mining shares that people invest in, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a speck. It's not even close to the size of U.S. stock market or the world global stock market. It's just not even close. So that was just a point blank lie to your face, right when you're listening to that.
And well, here's the other thing that's interesting is look at the visuals that are going on behind here. You see the chart falling off a cliff. You see it down in red letters, almost 6%. And this is the day when we had panic buying. This is the day that the 61 million shares allegedly went into the trust that he's an authorized participant of. And then they changed the documents the next day. And then he said this 2 days later. And they wonder why silver falls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
CFTC is investigating the Reddit traders.
No, not only that, but they're also going out on Twitter and using like Stasi tactics by scaring everyone and saying we're investigating the silver market and the Reddit traders that are in there, and basically trying to use Cold War tactics to scare and intimidate people from talking badly about, say, SLV or this or that, and everyone starts to be paranoid about getting a lawsuit from the CFTC. It's really ugly. It's really bad, and it's sad that we've gotten to this situation that our supposed capital markets, our supposed important markets for discovering the price of commodities, goods, services around the world have gotten so perverse, and the people who are supposed to be policing it are some of the worst. I mean, and what they're doing and the way that they're acting.
I mean, that only sunk in while it was on the background while we were doing it. I mean, the statements are silly, but that at that time, my God.
Yeah, it almost makes you think it's coordinated, wouldn't you, Chris? It makes you feel like
that's the same day JP Morgan released their report at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because here we are, we have COMEX options expiration, and hey, there's a little time left on the clock, but there was a big position in the open interest on the 28 strike, which unusual to see it above that. And if they tell me, just please don't let them send this guy out there to do this tomorrow, please. I mean,
please, no, he's good. I like him. Every time he gets up there and says this kind of stuff, it blows holes in there. Like, this is not hard to just pick apart and put on the internet and just blow credibility holes right through them. I mean, he is just a walking, talking clown. Like, keep talking, dude. I mean, seriously.
James,
how are you head of the freaking global head of the commodities saying stuff like this on TV and no one says you're an idiot? I'm sorry. I mean, it's either that or you're just spewing misinformation, and like, I don't know what the tactic is there. Either way, it's ridiculous.
James, I'll give a guess. Until we started talking about last week about what he said on CNBC, when was the last time someone in the silver community ever actually stopped and listened and slowed this down? I mean,
well, yeah, they haven't had pointed questions
what do you think
about size and scale. This is the first time these people have to come on TV and talk to this. Actually, it hasn't happened in a long time. So that's probably why, Chris. Because if they had gone on TV years ago and said just this kind of crap, we would have picked them apart. There's no way they'd have gotten away with this.
Well, that's the thing. None of these guys talked about silver since 2011. So, gee, you can see why.
Yeah, why JP Morgan doesn't bring their head of the precious metals desk in front of cameras. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So, James, I guess the only thing that could be more stunning than what I'm looking at right now is that we've still only made it 35 seconds into the clip. And I promised this was going to be a short one. So rest up, James. You got a full day booked tomorrow. That's how these silver markets work. And the market can digest Goldman Sachs's advice on silver. Let's see how those options go and what happens to the price of silver while the market digests this. Well, COMEX delivery cycle is in play for the rest of the week. Thank you, as always, for joining me. For everyone watching at home, if you think this is helpful information to know that the silver market has now grown bigger than the size of equities,
It's incredibly unlikely.
Yeah.
then hit the share button, tag a friend, let them know. And for more coverage of Jeff Currie's analysis of the silver market, stay tuned because it's coming your way now.